everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. If you're with us on Instagram, as per usual, it's going to look funny. If you jump over to YouTube, you can see the video, but feel free to just listen on Instagram if that's what you prefer. We were discussing before we started, I'm not sure why I look all ghostly and look at that. I mean, it's like so blurry. Not sure what's going on with that, but hey, I'm here. I've got Chardonnay in hand. I have Ray, Holly, and Cheryl with me. Tonight's just open chat. We had a great discussion last week, but tonight's just open chat. Also, final announcement is that in my area, I'm in Indiana, and we have thunderstorm and tornado warnings right now. So if the stream dies, I'm sorry. I'm probably dead, but let's cross fingers that's not the case. Anyhow, hope your tanks and your seahorses and your reef tanks are doing fabulous. Hope your week was great. And if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, put them in the chat and we'll discuss them. But as it is just open chat, let's see how everybody's doing. Holly, what's up with you? What's new?
Doing good. The K1 is still cycling. It's in the nitrite phase right now. So
nice.
It's got nitrites off the chart. But we lost our nice warm weather from last week. So everything kind of slowed down. It got going, then slowed down. Because the room that it's in is not a heated room. It has a heater in the bucket, but it doesn't do as well when the room temperature's down.
Right.
So it's probably going to be a while, but I did make it through the ammonia, and now it's in the nitrite phase. So
that's
very cool.
That's the slow stage is converting from the nitrites to the nitrates. That generally takes longer.
That's the longest I noticed on my freshwater tank. It just took forever. It took, I want to say, weeks once it hit the nitrites. I'm like, is this ever going to go away? But I'm just letting it ride.
So. And if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about cycling K1 media, pre-cycling it before she puts it into the tank. And Dan has talked about this numerous times, but I think, was it Ask Seahorse Source Part 1 that he went into detail? I think it was. I'll try to link it when we're done, but just search Ask Seahorse Source on YouTube and on my channel, obviously. Mm-hmm. And he goes over why the nitrite takes longer. We also did a cycling Wine Wednesday too, so search that up if you want to know more. But yeah, nitrites are the longest.
I overdid the ammonia a little bit. I told Cheryl, because I wanted it at 2 parts per million, but I didn't.
She did a Cheryl.
I didn't wait long enough to measure it after I put the ammonia in. Mm-hmm. So by the time it actually got well mixed with the water, it hit 4 parts per million, like between 3 and 4. And I'm like, that's all right. I'm not going to mess with it. I'll just let it go from there. And then next time I'll add a little less ammonia so it's not back up to 4.
Right. I started at 6 if I'm going to have a heavy pile load.
What did you say, Ray?
Dump in the ammonia and hope.
Wait, hang on, guys. What did you say, Ray?
I start at 6 parts per million if I'm going to have a heavy pile load.
Now, see, I have a question about that, though, Ray, because I think, and maybe I'm wrong, I'd have to go back and watch my own video, but I could swear that Dan said if you use too much ammonia, then it'll stall the cycle. Is that not correct?
Well,
it takes longer. Well, maybe he's had a problem with it, but I never have. It takes longer than if you're doing lesser amounts, but the whole point of it is that I can put more livestock in the tank right off the bat.
Yeah.
If you put in, like some of these times I put enough livestock in, if I've only done 2 or 4, I'm going to end up with too much ammonia and can end up losing them.
Well, right. I get that point. Cycling for higher is going to be better.
And for me, I mean, my stuff's already cycled where I'm putting it. I'm just adding 2. So I don't feel like I need it that high. But like a 4 to me wasn't too high for what I'm doing. I'm like, it's all right. I'll leave it at that. So I did. So it'll take a little longer, but it's okay. I'm not in a hurry.
Just do it the way I do. Dump the whole bottle in and kick back.
Please don't do that, people. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, Cheryl.
Well, no, but I think it's great that you're pre-cycling and that you're paying attention to all this, because I can't tell you how many times I've tried to rush a setup and I've cycled the tank instead of, pre-cycling media or whatever. And then I get the Seahorses, and then all of a sudden I have nitrites. And I'm like, shit, and then you got to go through all that, and it's such a mess.
And I've been pulling out like a couple of the live stocks every week. So that by the time I'm ready to switch it all over, it's slowly adjusting, but everything's fine. Everybody's doing well. And I'm not looking forward to that day when I change it all out. Seriously. I mean, I don't want to do it until the weather's warm because it's going to take me. And when it's not warm here, I have to heat Seahorse's water on the stove to match water. To match water in the tank, when I'm changing a lot of water, like on water change days, because the water's 50 degrees.
Wow.
So I have to heat it to get it there 67, 68. So what I'll do is I'll take, I have a pot that is really about a third of the bucket, and I heat that on the stove to roughly twice the temperature of what's in the bucket, I figured out, and that makes the right temperature. So it's cold, I have to spend more time heating the water. So, and plus it's cold for me in the water in the tank, and, going back and forth between outside and inside rooms and all that. So I'd rather do it when it's more summer type weather. Which hopefully we'll have a week there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm listening to all of you, but I'm Googling because Seahorse Corner said I thought over 4 ppm ammonia is toxic to good bacteria too. I'm Googling because I'm not sure. I've had it go up to 4, but it was in a pre-cycled situation, like obviously, and it ended up cycling. It just took longer. So
well, for me, there's no good bacteria to start with when I'm using 6 parts per million.
Oh, because you don't use bottle bacteria, right? You just ammonia.
Just start up the tank and pour the ammonia in and let it cycle.
Gotcha.
And see, how I started my original Seahorse tank. I didn't use bacteria when I was cycling. I did like Ray. I just let it do its thing. It took months.
I never ever had a tank.
The other thing to keep in mind when you're jump starting filter media is bacteria prefers a warmer tank than we normally keep our Seahorses at.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up.
78, it's going to go a lot faster. Drop a heater in there and bring it along.
I would like it. See, I was hoping, because when I started, spring was coming. Like I said, we had a few days that were 80 degrees, and I'm like, nice, it's going to warm up. That's going to help with the cycling. And then, no, we got winter back. So
I'm telling you, it was nice here yesterday, and now it's tornadoes.
So happy. The amphipods were out partying. They were having a grand time in the 80-degree weather, and now it's like they're all back to hibernating style.
Yeah.
Actually, I was curious about that. I think, well, I'll ask my question in a minute because I don't want to jump topics. But Ray, you said it didn't take you months. You just put 6 ppm ammonia in, and then you waited for it to come down to 0.
I've never spent months before I was able to put stock in.
And we're using, go ahead.
When it comes to that, though, like I would never do it that way again. I haven't cycled a tank since many years ago when I got my order in from Australia. And I had 2 tanks cycled, 2 types of tanks cycled. I had one for a 90 gallon for the abdominalis, and I had a 40 gallon that I was going to put 8
Barbary?
8 Barbary in. Well, the 40 gallon tank that was ready for the Barbary, I did a water change just before I got them, and I had a problem that I didn't notice until after I did the water change. I had a sump pump in the 50-gallon drum that I had the water in, that I mixed up the water and let it aerate and so on. And the sump leaked oil.
Oh,
The oil,
shit.
then I put the water in this tank when I did the water change, and then I ended up with the tank contaminated with this oil.
Oh.
And then the next day,
uh,
I'm bringing in from Toronto the shipment from the Seahorses from Australia. So I told you this before, that I started up another 40-gallon tank that I was going to anyway, because I wasn't going to keep all 8 in that 40-gallon tank. That was a temporary measure. And so I started up one of the others, and I didn't put any ammonia in it. I put in the Chloromex, and then when the Seahorses came, I put the Seahorses in it. I kept on testing 3 or 4 times a day for ammonia, and kept adding Chloromex. And if there was even a trace of ammonia, it meant I need to add some more Chloromex. And I just kept on like that, and gradually the amount of Chloromex that I had to add was less and less. And eventually the tank was cycled, and that was it.
let's remember,
Yeah,
my freshwater tank took the longest, and I'm wondering if it has something to do with what your biomedia is. Because I think when I did my display tank and the grow out tank were both faster to cycle than the freshwater tank. But they
I've
have
never used anything but live
biomoles and
rock.
a lot of biomedia. In the freshwater tank, all it's got is that bio wheel thing in it.
Right.
So it
I
probably
think,
takes longer to build up the bacteria.
It's been so many years since I've kept any freshwater fish. I can't even come close to answering that. I do know I can cycle a tank within 6 days if I'm desperate. But
right,
that's
right.
using, yeah, that's using beneficial bacteria. I use the Fritz Turbo Start 900, and it's also using pure ammonia. And I mean, it can be done, but I do not advocate doing that because you
Right.
don't
That's
See,
for desperate.
that's what I'm doing with the K1 though, Cheryl. I use the Fritz Turbo Start 900, and I've got it in a 5-gallon bucket, but I started it on the 2nd of this month. So it's already been like a couple weeks, and I'm only to the nitrite part.
Yeah. Well, remember,
I did 44 parts per million, but still, like if it
Wait,
would have
wait.
been fast, like they said, it
Are
should
you
have been done.
remember,
Holly-
K1 media is specifically designed for aerobic metabolism. Basically, what it's doing is converting nitrites to nitrates, and that's the slowest leg on the entire system, and that's very normal. The thing is, it gets a little frustrating sometimes. You really have to, when you cycle a tank really fast, you potentially running into problems down the road if it's not if it's not enough media to do the job.
Well, I'm
But
curious
see,
real quick.
it just got to the nitrites though yesterday. It was reading ammonia.
Right. So
up
Holly, I'm
until
curious.
the day before yesterday.
And so you added up to 4 parts per million on the 2nd, and it's just now hitting nitrites. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I turbo start when
the
thing is, I had it in the fridge. The Fritz Turbo Start has been in my refrigerator for a few months now, and it had a best buy date of March 16th. So it was a few weeks, like 2 weeks past the expiration date, you could say. But I'm like, I don't know if that makes a difference or not. I'm going to just add it anyway. But I didn't.
It's not going to hurt anything.
It depends on how it was shipped.
I started with 2 tablespoons, and then I just kept adding it a little at a time.
So my question is,
there wasn't a measurement for that small an amount. I had to guess.
So when I cycle tank, I kind of follow those Dr. Tim's or Dan's listed things where you add the ammonia and then on day 3 the ammonia should be gone. But if you add it on the second, I think that kind of advocates the fact that maybe higher ammonia counts do stall the cycle. But Ray, so you said, how long did you say it would take you if you put your ammonia in for 6 parts per million? How long would it take you to get to nitrites and have it cycle?
If it's at 6 parts per million, I'm probably into the 6 weeks.
Okay, so see, I really think that when
so that makes sense, then I'm closer to that.
Yeah,
I am
that's what I think.
close to that.
2 parts per million, I usually didn't have a problem having it ready in 4 weeks.
Right, or if you use bacteria, like Cheryl said,
and all I use is sterile live rock.
Yep, and that's the other
never
difference.
Used any special media.
Felicia McCauley and I, sorry, we all keep talking at the same time. Hang on, we all gotta. Sorry, but Felicia McCauley and I kind of had a deep conversation about this a long time ago because we advocate dry rock or no rock in Seahorse tanks now, and Ray was using live rock. I think that makes a huge difference. I don't know how to get around it.
Live rock, like I made it live.
Oh, okay. So it was like
rock
you bleached
that I've had since back in the early '90s when I had all my reef tanks, and so then when I had to start shutting down tanks because of my spine, then I ended up with live rock that wasn't being used anymore. So it just sat out, went dry, and sitting like that for a couple of years before I got into Seahorses.
Right.
So then all I did with it was give the stuff, put it outside in a big bucket, and put the hose on it with the jet spray, jetted it all, left it on the deck to dry, put it in the sump, put the water in, and then cycled the tank.
Right.
But then, like I said, if I was in a position to still be able to stay in the hobby and cycle another tank, I'd do it the way I did with the barbs.
Right.
So much easier.
But even what you're talking about, rock that you've used previously and then you dry out, I still think there's a difference between that and like the man-made dry rock, because I had in my 65-gallon, I had this beautiful aquascape because I had a company make me literally rocks that I got to design. So it was like
that's not
totally
the same.
It takes forever to cycle that kind of thing. And Seahorse Corner, I'm curious, what's the deal with your tanks? Because I know you don't usually use rock, right? In most of them. So I'm curious, like, how long it takes you. And Ben, welcome to our Wine Wednesday. Typically, we talk seahorses, but it could be anything saltwater related. We often have reef guests. Last week, we talked about the Lacey Act. You just never know. So we just get together and drink wine and hang out for an hour or two every Wednesday. But we're glad to have you. If you have any questions about seahorses or anything else, feel free to ask, because that's what we're here for, is the community, just to answer questions and talk with each other. And hey, Kevin, and hey, everybody else. I think I mentioned everybody. But
hi, everybody.
Yep. Now I forgot where I was going. I totally just, my brain just went poof. I forgot where I was going with it. It's the wine. I know it. Darn it.
How much is left?
The bottle's not empty. We're good. It usually is by the end of the night, though. He does. He's on me if I'm late, and he's on me if I drink it.
He's saving it for the tornado.
Oh, and the other thing is, we have a couple of people that when we talked last week, there's a couple of people that I invited to come in as special guests. You guys got to message me so that I can get you in here, give you the link to jump in. Whatever week you're able. I also talked to Dan yesterday, and
Kevin.
Yeah, hi Diane.
Yeah, I've seen people from last week. Cool.
Yeah, and so Jason and I can't remember the other guy's name, but we need to get them in to talk about the veterans and all the cool things that they're doing. But I did talk to Dan last night. He is working himself crazy into the ground. I guess there's some sick people at his job, so he's having to work extra shifts. We really are going to do that Ask Seahorse Source Part 3, where he talks about probiotics and Artemia and Fry and all that stuff. We are still going to do it. I promise. But he's just been super busy, so it's going to take a few more weeks. But anyhow, Yeah, Kevin. Kevin is the one that we want to get in here. Duh. I'm sorry. I can't believe I just did that. Sorry, Kevin. But so yeah, I totally forgot what we were just talking about. But we talk about whatever on Line Wednesday. But yeah, no, I think that we've kind of looked at the fact. Oh, that's right. I was talking about the man-made rock and Seahorse Corner. I'm curious if when you cycle your tanks that don't use rock, like you have mostly fake ornaments, how long it takes you, what do you use, how do you do it? Because I usually use Dr. Tim's. I usually follow it. I do like Fritz too, but I do use bottle bacteria. I do pre-cycle with ammonia. A couple of videos about that. But I just know the tanks that I've set up, like Cheryl described, you can do it in a week, but I've had trouble with every one of them every time if I tried to rush it.
I'll say my grow-out tank went pretty fast. I think it was only 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I did using the ammonia, like the household ammonia, which is what I do now. That's what I'm doing with the K1. But when I did my display tank, it was before I knew about that.
Right.
And I did it using live rock.
Okay. Well, one of the things I've found that works really well, which probably is very different from what a lot of people do, I build my own sumps. And I make the baffles wide enough. And so in the baffles is my primary filtration, which is all rubble rock. And it makes
there's so many ways.
I've done it differently before years ago. And I can actually have a tank ready to go in 6 days using my rubble rock.
So I have a question for you guys about the rubble rock, since I'm new to it. Since Kelly sent me that rubble rock, that's the first time I've had it. But it seems really soft to me, like it would fall apart easily, like if you have it for a long time. Like it could be crumbly.
I use coral skeletons, smaller pieces of rock chipped off of a big rock. I got lucky several years ago. A friend of mine just gotten out of the military and they were moving. And he had to sell off all his coral skeletons and smaller rocks and everything. And I went home with several buckets of rubble rock. And I'll tell you, at least from my perspective, it makes all the difference in the world. But each one of the baffles are about 2 inches wide. So I have a lot of rubble rock in there.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't
wait. Daniel.
It doesn't like chalk or decompose when it's in there, really? It stays.
No, it doesn't. Well, once it's in the water, the biggest thing you have to remember if you're going to use rubble rock is you need a fairly high flow going through your sump because it's got to be self-cleaning. Otherwise, you're going to build up detritus on it. So you need to run a higher flow than most people would run on it.
Right. Because you got to get you don't want stuff falling in. That's why we don't use crushed coral in Seahorse tanks for the same reason. But no, I do want to say really quick, Daniel, I promise we're going to talk about your question in just a second. I just want to get through this cycling conversation and then we're coming right back to your question, I promise. But the rubble rock, Holly, I told you I hadn't used it in a long time, but it definitely shouldn't be soft or crumbly. Like I have had problems with like, hang on. Wait, let me finish what I was going to say. I have used those marine pure blocks, and those sometimes get crumbly over time. But rubble rock literally should just be crushed up pieces of rock.
Yeah.
So if it's soft, maybe something happened to it while it was sitting.
Some of it in there, maybe like some of it was in there too, because it was kind of crumbly. Some of it.
Well, I wouldn't use the crumbly parts.
I rinsed it and I put it through bleach cycle and all that. You know, I cleaned it up. But I noticed when it came, and maybe it had to do with because it was dry. Maybe when it's drier, it's more like that. I don't know. I've never used it or had it before, so I just wasn't familiar with it.
Right. Well, like I said, rubble rock is literally just supposed to be crushed up rock. So it should not, if you find anything crumbly, don't use it. Sorry. I didn't put anything in there, but
it's fine in amphipods. It's clean and nice. It's not crumbling in there, but when I opened it and it was dry, some of it, before I washed it and all that. So maybe it was just residue from the other stuff. Maybe
because in that sump, It was in the 90
Mhm.
gallon sump, and you saw how I was using it. I was just literally using it in the sump. A tube went down in and ran the water.
In
And
that jar, yeah.
Kevin made a point of he keeps 40 pounds of live rock in his sump to start new tanks, but have to keep the trays clean. So I don't have it
Yeah.
anymore. I sent it to Holly, but in the rubble rock that I had, it was literally like the container that is called rubble rock. And I watched a video somewhere, and I had holes drilled in the sides so the water would come back out, and then a hole down the top, and I had a tube going into it. So literally the water coming down into the sump went right into the rubble rock
Through it.
and ran through it. So there was no way it was going to get clogged up. But keeping it clean and keeping high flow is definitely important. Kevin also said you can cycle your rock in a bucket or brute trash can by putting the rock in salt water with power head and heater, then add ammonia source and bacteria, then let it run covered for a month or so. Yeah, that's exactly what
That's
we're
what I'm
talking
doing.
about. Yep. That's you're
My
exactly
K1
right though, Kevin.
Right now. That's my K1 in the bucket right now.
Yeah, pre-cycled media is a lifesaver. And I had talked about the times that I've tried to set up a tank, in a week, and you can do it. But every time something's gone wrong, either I ended up with nitrites, a week after the Seahorse has gone in or whatever, and it just ended up being more maintenance versus setting things up properly to begin with, right? So
I always have one system set up that I call my rock tank.
Yep.
And it gets fed every couple of days, and it's got a heater on it, so it stays warmer than normal. And I obviously test it periodically. And I much prefer moving that into a new system than trying to start from scratch. The other thing
Right.
is when I'm talking rubble rock, I'm not talking little bitty pieces that turn into sand like some of the stuff. I'm
Right.
talking coral skeletons, chunks of rock that are 2 to 3 inches in diameter. I mean, that's why I have the large spaces in my baffles, is to accommodate, because the little stuff will just break down and turn into crap. But if you
Yep.
do it with larger pieces, you don't have that problem.
Okay, we got to get back to Daniel's question, but real quick, I just wanted to. Heather, Seahorse Corner said you can read it, but I keep most of my rock in the sump. But she also has bioball, ceramic media, sponges, major filtration, canister filters. So, and then her next comment was basically with all the extra, she puts sponge filters in her already cycled sumps and keeps them there, and they're getting cycled. And with all that media, she can instantly do a tank, and that's the whole idea. That's almost the same as pre-cycled media. And Kevin also said he keeps a power head in his sump blowing across the live rock. Love all those ideas, because we're coming to find there's so many ways to do Seahorse tanks and obviously reef tanks, but most of us have come to find that, except for Ray's still a live rock guy, but most of us are like pulling the rock out because it seems that fake ornaments help with color, and the Seahorse is just in every rock tank I've ever had with Seahorses, the Seahorses turn the color of the rock. So that's not always the case, but just it has been with me. And so whether you're doing, finding new methods of filtration is great. I love it because,
Well, all my tanks are bare bottom, first of all. And I keep
Right.
minimal amount of rock. In fact, the only rock that's in my bare bottom tanks are the ones that I made the little artificial coral holders out of.
Right.
And those aren't very big. But it's one of those things where your main filtration is going to be in your sump.
Right.
And you have to design the sump to accommodate what your stocking density is going to be.
Right. More Seahorses, you need a bigger skimmer and more stuff in the sump. But you can also, and I'm proving it right now, anybody new that wants to get set up with Seahorses but can't do some huge elaborate sump, I'm keeping Seahorses in a 40-gallon all-in-one.
Yeah.
They're fine. I've actually got some questions about pregnancy here in a minute, but let's go back to Daniel's question real quick. Sorry, we're jumping around, but I want to make sure we get to it. Daniel said, "Hi guys, I have a male Seahorse who had babies 2 months ago, but his stomach has stayed huge. It's been 2 months and he eats and flirts, but his stomach won't shrink. What gives?" Ray, do you have any thoughts on that? You never get to
Is
talk.
it a Barbary? I mean, is it an abdominalis?
So we need to know the species, Daniel. Do you know what species?
Yeah, and it's talking about the pouch.
Inflated all the time.
Wait, what did Ray say?
The abs keep their pouch inflated all the time. With others, their pouch they'll inflate it to attract the female.
Yeah.
It automatically gets inflated when they have an egg transfer and until it gives birth. And quite often they get a transfer right away, so it starts back getting large right away. If it's staying large all the time and not having buoyancy problems and not having fry, then I don't have an answer.
Okay, so real quick, I just want to, I always try to dumb it down. Not saying any of you are dumb, but like when somebody answers me like that, I'm like, wait, what's buoyancy? What's this? What's that? So buoyancy, if your seahorse is floating, acts like he can't swim and his belly's all big, that's buoyancy issues. He keeps floating to the top. That's usually gas bubble or pouch emphysema. I'm sorry, which we have a whole video about that if you ever have that problem. But I'll also say that I liked Ray's answer about the fact that seahorses, once they start having babies, it's like the female's fat and saying, push them out, buddy, because I got more eggs. And so like it's this continual, usually they take breaks and all, but I will also say that my male seahorse in the 40-gallon all-in-one has tricked me for about 4 months now, me thinking he's pregnant. And then all of a sudden I see him doing the inflating and deflating of the pouch. So we need to know, Daniel, the species of the seahorses, whether he had babies 2 months ago and his pouch has stayed huge, but he hasn't done any more egg transplants or had transfers. Sorry, not transplants. And he hasn't given birth to any more fry. Questions like that we need to know to help you.
A picture with him too. Some of mine just have big pouches. Some
That's
of my
true.
males are big.
Yeah.
They're just big.
And I have noticed too that after they have
they've been inflating and deflated, their pouches get bigger the older they get.
And after they have birth, their pouches are like saggier, bigger. And Cheryl, you were trying to talk. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, some males too will have, it's not unusual for them to have false pregnancies, particularly in younger males, where they get so excited, they blow up their pouch, and then they stay bloated for a couple of weeks. And then the next thing you know, they're courting again and no fry. But that's fairly common in young males, so you need to keep that in mind as well. They just don't quite seem to know quite, hey, I'm pregnant, I'm full of water.
Right. Oh, well, I was just telling to hopefully make Daniel feel better, because it basically, as Ray was saying, if he's not floating and he's eating fine, he might just be a big pouch boy, or he might, like I said, I've thought my seahorse was pregnant for months and there's no fry coming. Ticks me off. I have a question about that later, but yeah, if you could, and that's another thing. Hang on, Holly. I just wanted to say real quick, anybody who comes to my Wednesday and has questions, or you are more than welcome. If you message me, I can let you jump in and you can share a video or etc. And or if you send me pictures, I can show them while we're talking. Francis does that often. Final thing is, it's storming outside, guys. So if we all of a sudden disappear, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Holly. You were trying to say something.
Oh, I was just saying, Seahorse Corner, Heather says he's probably keeping it inflated to try to get knocked up.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
They do that too. They want to make it look big.
Yeah, that's the key, is they inflate their pouch to impress the female. The female picks the male, generally the largest male with the largest pouch. So there is more to this juvenile pouch inflation than meets the eye, because they're trying to impress the ladies. And I have to laugh. I have a young pair, an orange pair that I truly love. And he's just now starting to really grow and get big. And she keeps going through these growth spurts where she'll start to look a little thin, and then all of a sudden she shoots up. But what's happening now is they're hitching together.
Ooh.
Inflating his pouch. Not all the time, but he's definitely working on it. It's not quite there yet, but it's hysterical to watch because they're obviously becoming close friends, so to speak.
Sorry, daughter. But yeah, no, that's awesome. Congrats. My question that I've been alluding to all night is, I've been wondering, because every time I've had seahorses before, in the past, they like start breeding so quickly that like I'm not even ready for it usually. So with these recent seahorses, again, I keep thinking they're pregnant and then they're not. I see them courting. I see them nudging each other, bumping heads, and then doing the spin dance. I've not seen an egg exchange and no fry. And it's a 40-gallon all-in-one without a sump. As we talked about, you guys, I do recommend sumps, but I'm trying to prove you can do it without a sump if you're willing to do the work and have the equipment. Anyways, back to the point. I am wondering.
I love what Seahorse Corner just said. That's true. I had the same problem after I gave birth. Inflated.
Right, exactly. I'm right there. Don't ask me why my belly's big. But no, I was wondering though. I realized the other day, we talk about temperature all the time and you don't want swings and this, that, and the other. And I know Dan has talked in the past about how he has used temperature as a breeder to like induce them to get to hopping, get to making fry. And this tank, this 40-gallon on one, because of where it is in the house, I guess, the room it's in, and I don't know why, but it's just much cooler than any of my other tanks have ever been. It runs like 67, 69-ish, right? Which isn't too cool. That's fine. But could that be affecting their motivation to breed? Should I maybe look at the temp?
I'll say when our temperatures warmed up here the other day, when we were getting to 80, I had the house open up and my chillers actually popped on. And I have them set to come on at 72. Now, normally the tanks run, other than when it gets warm here, they're about 69. Like you said, 67 to 69. Now, that doesn't seem to stop them because they do the courting thing every couple weeks in my display tank, regardless of the temperature.
Right.
But they did seem to all get excited when it was warmer the other day. And they were all chasing each other around, in the grow out tank, in the display tank. Everyone was excited. But that doesn't happen all the time throughout summer. So I'm wondering if it's the time that it takes to get to that temperature, like the temperature raised faster. Like spring, like it's a sign of spring. All of a sudden it's getting warmer.
Right.
And because I know like Heather keeps her tanks fairly cool. She's about 68, 69 degrees and her seahorses are breeding left and right.
Yeah, right.
So I don't think it necessarily has a whole lot to do with it, but maybe if the temperatures go up a little quicker or they're suddenly higher than they have been for a long time, it's like, when we get excited, when all of a sudden, I mean, I was excited too that the weather was warmer, so
hopefully you didn't try to go court, but no.
Remember too, most species of seahorses tend to be seasonal breeders. That is, like with Hippocampus erectus, we see them starting to cycle into breeding condition depending on water temperatures as the waters warm up, February, March, and they usually stop or slow way down by November, and they don't produce as much. And that is based on length of daylight and water temp. Those are two major factors.
So you can play with it, but it's probably not a factor in them not getting pregnant yet. They're probably just still too young. I'm just sick of thinking they're pregnant. I'm like, give me some fries.
The grow out tank, I saw them starting to swim up finally, which usually what happens is they're attempting the egg transfer on the ground. I keep finding spilled eggs and they're like riding around together on the floor, or they haven't learned to go up and spin and
See,
dance.
mine are started spinning from the very start. In fact, I've also questioned, we went from a long time ago saying that you have to have a higher tank especially if you want to breed. To saying that doesn't matter. And I've had people on the channel, multiple people that have kept seahorses in freaking 12-inch high tanks that still bred, right? They figured it out. They found a way. But I personally, this tank's a little bit shorter. I think it's either 16 or 18 inches. Anyways, point being, they do hit the top and act like they're not done spinning. So I constantly think either they're just still trying to figure it out, which is probably the case. I'm rushing it. Or maybe it's too short. Maybe they do need the height.
I don't know. The thing is, in my display tank, Candy is dancing with her son, Scrappy Doo.
Right.
And they've come real close to doing the egg transfer. They've come real close. I watch them, and they're doing the right moves. And she's a mom. I mean, she's had
she knows
before with his dad. So I don't know what's going on for them, but I don't think it has anything to do with the tank, because Fry have been born plenty of times in that tank.
Right. Well, so and I mean, there are so many factors. I mean,
it's so many things. It's hard to know.
When I had a ton of seahorses in the 65, and most of them were, paired off breeding. And my main male did have babies with multiple females, right? He didn't, but he had his big white beauty. These two seahorses, my biggest two seahorses, male and female, they were the typical breeders, and I always got the best fry from them. But there was one boy in the tank that just no girl would give eggs. They just wouldn't. They didn't like him. There was no reasoning. I don't know if he stunk or what, but he never got eggs.
Did they at least dance with him?
Well, it depends on what you mean by dance. A male can come up and kind of like force themselves and bump heads, and no twirling though. They wouldn't twirl with him.
Candy will dance. She'll dance with Scrappy Doo. But when it comes time to do the egg transfer, she leaves. She swims away. When they're lining up, it's like all of a sudden she changes her mind. And somebody said to me, well, maybe it's because she knows it's her son.
Maybe.
Guys, hold on a minute. What couple things you need to remember. One, if you're depending on the species, they have different breeding seasons depending on what part of the world they're coming from.
Right, true.
No, that's one. My combs typically reproduce basically during the cold months in the shorter daytime, but they also have been considered a nocturnal species for many years. The other aspect of it is the water, it cools down during that time frame, and that is when they tend to reproduce, as opposed to my erectus, which when the temperatures warm up and the days get longer, that's when they go for it. The other aspect to think about is we talk about seahorses dancing. Yes, erectus dance, they have a very elaborate dance, circling together, etc. Combs typically complete an egg transfer while hitched.
Right. That's it. You're right, Cheryl. That's a good point. It does depend on the species. When I'm usually talking about erectus. I've also kept Barbori, Reed-eye, and Cuda too, though, and they all danced. But good point, Cheryl. Good points. Sorry. And I'm just frustrated, y'all, because I'm just so used to getting seahorses and they start breeding. And these guys, it's been crazy though, because remember, we're talking about a 40-gallon all-in-one. No sump. There is a skimmer, there is a UV, there is a sock, and there's aquachar. Oh, I'm gonna sidetrack real quick. Kevin, to answer your question, Robert did message me about the char chambers. Can't wait to get them, but I don't think I've even given him my address yet. So it could be on my end, the fault of why I haven't gotten them. But definitely tell him to reach out to me, or I'll try to remember to do it myself, because I'm excited to do some videos and talk about them some more. Anyways, back to the story. These guys, I've had them a year now, and the female gets so fat. I've got pictures you wouldn't believe. When I take a picture of her head on, she looks like a stick with a basketball, and she gets so fat. They'll be dancing. I see him all over her and them all over the tank, and then nothing. I don't find eggs anywhere. He doesn't have babies.
Aphrodite, huh?
No,
Yeah,
it's the other girl, but she does the same thing too.
Aphrodite is a year and a half old. I just saw in my post the other day. So I made a post a while back. They were 6 months old. So yeah, they just turned a year and a half, all of them. And yeah, so I have 8 of them left. There's 2 males and 6 females in there. And there's a male and female that they hang out together all the time, and they're kind of paired up, and that's who I keep finding eggs from. And I think they're trying, but they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know about the dancing part. Now, what's interesting is thing 2. Remember, I lost him.
Right.
He was the only one that knew how to dance.
See,
and when he came back, all the females were like impressed with him. They're like,
come
wow.
on, dance with me. Right. Actually, real quick.
Left, nobody swims up. They all want to stay close to the bottom.
Right. Well, I don't have that problem. Mine go up. They've been going up the whole time. But that you brought up an interesting point that I should point out is that the male and the female that do most of the courting and most of the swimming, sorry, my nails came off. I look stupid. But are the 2 that I got from Ocean Rider, the yellows that I got from Ocean Rider. But the other female in the tank, Aphrodite, the male dances with her too. And she does swim up. All my seahorses are swimming up. The reason we say that is because Aphrodite is more of a, she likes to stay low. She likes to hide. She likes to be in, she doesn't like to be out swimming like the rest of them. But the point being, they're not all from the same source. So
yeah,
you like, even if it was a problem where they were siblings or something, which is not a problem because most breeders breed a couple generations in, it just doesn't make sense. Because
let me chime in for a moment, and I'm going back years ago. One of the things I learned very early on is not all males are going to become fathers.
Right.
May not inflate their pouch. They may not dance well, and the females will not take to them. The flip side of that is you can put 2 females in a tank together, and they're dancing constantly, day in and day out, for 2 months, and all of a sudden, one of them has a pouch.
Right.
For the pouch, it obviously had to do with dancing with. They weren't siblings; they were from different broods. So there's a lot more social interactions involved with the mating process than we give them credit for.
Sure, and I've had that exact same experience, Cheryl. Yeah. I had 2 seahorses, and one was just bully. I felt like it was bullying. I know this is their ritual. This is what they do. But this seahorse just never left the other seahorse alone. And this was of seahorses that I had bred. So they were siblings. But bottom line is, oh my gosh, just constant harassment, trying to court, trying to swim. And I swear the other seahorse decided to become male because he didn't want to mess with me.
I've seen Combs females. I had one female was dancing with her mate. They'd already reproduced before. And another male tried to get between them. She grabbed him, laid him on the substrate, and snicked him. It was very, very clear that she was not interested.
Yeah, that's so much.
Female do that.
Seahorse Corner said they breed it more at 68 to keep warm, I think. And she said something about JoJo, Cheryl. Who's JoJo?
JoJo's the male that keeps producing all the fry, but they're small fry.
They're small, you said?
Yeah. I think one's a northern and one's a southern, and he's producing smaller, more like northern fry. And this is the one that I told her, I said, go get some San Francisco Bay brine shrimp eggs because the nepli are much smaller.
More their size.
And it's actually working out well for her.
Oh, good.
I didn't realize that there was a different size strain depending on the species. And actually, they're looking really, really good.
Awesome. She's a great breeder. You do a great job, Heather. And Kevin said, so Seahorses, it's just like the club. All the girls like the great dancers.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. That is it.
I don't know about.
it's been a.
In my tank,
Let me
they
tell you
like
a little.
Dandy, who's
Let me tell you a little
handicapped.
funny
Just
story.
'cause
Wait, time
he's
out,
so
time out, time out.
sweet.
Okay, Cheryl first, and then Holly.
Okay. Had a large pair of rectus in a 90-gallon, and I added some smaller ones. Well, these two little guys, one was a girl and one became a boy. They used to dance and do egg transfers behind the rocks, hiding from the big pair because the big pair would go after them if they were dancing in the 90-gallon tank.
Right.
I've
And I
heard
found
that they
it,
can do that, egg transfers on the
yeah,
floor like that.
it was
I've
it was
heard
one of
that.
those things. This little pair, they were bound and determined, and they did it. But I'll tell you, they were definitely hiding to the entire courtship and egg transfer.
Well, mine might be doing it that way too, because that's what they do. They have a little, like a log-shaped coral, is where they hang out. And then I go to feed them in the morning, and there's the eggs, so they're trying there at ground level.
So, hey Ray, I'm curious. Did your seahorses always do the upward circling dance, or
No.
Because I've never seen seahorses breed at the bottom, or do an egg exchange, I should say.
Well,
That's
over
really
the years,
interesting.
I've had a lot that dance and a lot that don't, and for me to remember specifically right now which ones didn't with the memory problems I have, I couldn't tell you. I
But you
know
had
that
them do both.
I've had seahorses that never produced.
Yeah.
I had Angustus back about 18 or 19 years ago, never produced. My combs never produced, but then again, I didn't have them for very long anyway, about a year, and then I lost them. And in the earlier years, I wasn't able to keep seahorses for a long time. Like if I managed 2 years when I first started, 2 years to me was great success back then. And
Right.
so now I know a lot more than I knew back then.
Right.
But everybody basically in the hobby knows more than what we knew back then.
Right. Right.
And so that's really increased the numbers of people that are successful in keeping them.
Absolutely.
However, the abdominalis, I got 6 of them from Seahorse Australia, and only one male produced any fry at all, and then he died just after he gave up the birth. And then none of the others ever produced. And the pair that I still have left has still never produced any.
So, do you have any thoughts on why, though, Ray? Because I mean, that's what I'm saying is, every other pair I've ever had, and even the ones that I bred myself, were all excited and ready to make babies. But why? Is it the tank? Is it the water? Is it just
I
the
have
seahorse?
no idea what it is. I know that
Damn
the
it,
people that I
Ray.
was selling them to, there were some people that were having fry coming out their ears, and they were wanting me to take them off their hands. And then there was others sitting there wondering why theirs never did. And these would be fry that they came all from the same birthing, and so it wasn't a case like it was some from one birthing and some from another,
or multiple generations in. It was the same batch.
It was like I had 2 males that I raised, and they were full brothers. Well, there were females involved with this also. But I ended up with 2 males. One male turned into a great producer. The other male never even inflated his pouch. It was like he didn't even know he had one.
Wow. And I wonder how commercial breeders determine, you get so many seahorses and you wait till they pair off, and then you put the best pair in a conditioning tank and you condition them for breeding. But man, it's just so crazy. Like, how do you, what if you bought seahorses and they didn't? Well, of course, breeders usually go wild caught, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm just ticked off. I want babies.
Well, and then in my tank, it's interesting because I have in my display tank, I have Dandy, who's handicapped. He can't swim right. He has motor skill issues.
He's
swimming.
special.
He's a special needs seahorse, but Sadie loves him to death. She prefers him. So Scrappy Doo will be pursuing her, when she has eggs, he'll be after her, and she'll be trying to be with Dandy.
Crazy.
She'd rather hang out with Dandy, and he's just so sweet, though. All the seahorses
Kevin has to leave. It's storming there. Stay safe, Kevin.
Be careful.
Kevin, are you close to me? Because it's storming here too. As I said all night, if this ends abruptly, I apologize. But be careful and just keep in touch. Kevin, we want you to come and be in the stream. So hopefully you heard that. But anyways, message me, please.
Yeah. So sorry, Holly, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I saw that. If he's happened to go.
I saw that too. Hopefully all will be okay.
Yeah.
Something that you might consider, though. I can remember, a number of years ago, some Reed, and he got fed up and he sold the whole shooting match to a neighbor of his. They started producing for his neighbor.
Of course. Oh, of course. I knew you were going to say that.
The neighbor didn't want the tank. He put them into a bigger tank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
see,
so
that's
there might have been something to do with the surroundings, the way that the tank was set up. I don't know. I've never experimented with playing around with the tank when I had that situation.
Right, and I agree with you, and that's what I keep thinking is maybe this tank really isn't tall enough, or maybe whatever. But then you guys say that they can breed at the bottom of the tank, and I know people who have seen that and done that. And my initial breeding pair that produced most of my fry that anybody else has or I sold, they were in a 29-gallon. With another pair, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I first started. And I had 4 seahorses in a 29-gallon. Of course, they had a bunch of macros, and I ended up adding a sump, and then I ended up moving them all to a bigger tank eventually. But in the beginning, they were breeding right away in a 29-gallon. But there was macros. Yeah. I think everything matters. I think the lighting and everything. And I did have a question for Ray and Cheryl. You said you've had seahorses that just don't breed, and you never know why, blah, 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 blah. Do you think there's any, I just think as we learn more, as Ray said earlier, we know so much more today, and it's so much easier to keep seahorses, but breeding is a whole nother cup of tea. But I think sometimes we go back and we, like the height thing, I really think that might be part of it. I really do. I think that it's not tall. Well, you could be right. But my question was, do you think once your pairs pair up, we've always said Project Seahorse and other conservation places are wrong about all seahorse species being monotonous. Some are. There are some.
Monogamous.
But monogamous. I'm sorry. Wine. Thank you, Allie. Thank you. Monotonous. Okay. Anyways.
We're the monotonous ones.
Right. Anyhow, my point being, now that I come to think about it, and I've made videos where I show that my big old purple male that was 12 inches, he did have fry with all the women, but he constantly would go back to one. She was obviously the one he liked the most. So my question is, have you guys seen, in your experiences, once a pair paired up, did they stay together? Yes. And obviously, if one of them dies, they will go with someone else to keep reproducing. No, but
the one that didn't pass away may very well pass away within a matter of weeks.
So they do pair up.
I have
some do, some don't.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I had a male got from Draco Marine many years ago, and I mean he was a huge erectus, and he paired up with a female that I had raised who was a northern. She was much smaller than him. They basically almost put me out of seahorses with their production and their survival rates.
Wow.
It blew my mind because he was so big and he never, ever looked at another female. He would attack other males that would go near her. Oh, yeah. And if she so much looked at another male, he'd put her on the ground, on the substrate.
Wow.
was
Talk
almost
about it.
spousal.
That
Almost
sounds like an
spousal.
abusive.
Well, I
Almost
think
spousal.
Heather has a point. I
But-
think they're different, like people.
Yeah.
Like she's saying, not just even she's saying libido wise, but I think they all have their own personalities. Because I'm noticing that with mine. When I got Sandy and Candy, they started mating within a week.
Yeah.
After I put them in the tank, I had my first batch of fry within a month of getting them. And then it was roughly 8 weeks apart. They were 8 weeks apart every time. And there was 5 batches of fry before I lost him. And they're all different. I've noticed the longer I have them, because now it's going on, 4 years straight that I've had these seahorses, is I'm noticing they're all little individuals. And like Scrappy Doo is crazy about Candy, but he wants Sadie on the side.
Lovely.
So
You know what? I know Cheryl needs to finish her sentence, but if Tyann is still out there or anyone from the clownfish world, I'm curious if clownfish are the same. Are they all individuals? How do you guys determine how to pair them up? Or does it just happen and do some breed and some don't? I know my clownfish wanted to lay eggs. I just didn't know what the heck I was doing. But Cheryl, you were going to say something else.
I was just going to say, the thing with the seahorses is, depending on the pair, they may remain, and it's even been scientifically done on research in seahorses in the wild. Some pairs remain monogamous. Some pairs, they've always said, oh, the females in the wild always pick out the largest male. There was one research paper I was reading that the female passed eggs to a very large male, and while she was cruising the neighborhood, she turned around and passed eggs to a much smaller male.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a linear path.
Right. Gotcha.
And this, I believe this was been done on Hippocampus whitey.
I do wish there was more research, though, because I also wonder if it has to do with, and we probably won't dive into this topic very far because, of course, we recommend captive bred seahorses, period. But when you get commercial breeders, they're usually going to get a wild caught pair and condition them themselves and then sell their fry because they're F1s. But I just wonder if that's part of it, too, is that basically our captive bred seahorses are so spoiled. They don't have the need to reproduce the way that wild caught do, because that's their whole point in life, is to reproduce, right? Make more of them. That's their goal in life. Whereas captive bred, we spoil them. They have no predators. If we're taking good care of the tank, they're in clean water, and maybe they just, they like to dance.
They're
but
not in a
why
hurry.
bother? Yeah, they're not in a hurry.
The thing is, you are going to see a percentage, there was actually a research study done on this also, where certain males will never reproduce, and as such, they will not court. And other females, they may change gender.
Right.
There's a lot of pieces to this that we don't have a clear understanding on. One of the things I know for sure is typically the larger males, but not always, will get the egg transfers. But it's like my little pair that hid behind the rock and completed an egg transfer. I was hauling babies out from my large male from Draco Marine. I looked over, and all of a sudden I'm seeing all these little fry, and I look in the 90-gallon on the other side of the room, and here's this little male delivering all these little bouncing baby seahorses.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm just tired of them tricking me. Ray, no worries. Have a good night. Thank you for coming.
Good night, folks.
Yep.
Good night,
We're going to end soon anyways.
Good to see you.
Good night, Ray.
And I'm going to try to let Ray talk more next time, because we always overtalk him, us women. But yeah, no, I would feel better if I just saw eggs. Like Holly sees the eggs spilled in every other tank. If I saw them dancing and courting and doing all the moves, then I would see the eggs if he didn't get pregnant. In this 40 gallon, I'm not seeing eggs. I'm not seeing fry. And she goes from fat to skinny. I don't get it.
In my display tank, Kelly, I have never seen eggs. I have never found spilled eggs. And yeah, the females will get big. They have eggs, obviously. And yeah, like
Well,
Scrappy Doo and
Cheryl,
Candy
didn't
will
you?
court, but I never see her dump eggs. Just all of this, it's usually a 3-day courtship,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's back to normal.
And Cheryl, didn't you say that the female can't absorb them?
Wait a minute, run that by me again.
Eggs.
I said, didn't you say that a female, if she decides not to give him the eggs or he's not doing it right, she can absorb them?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe that's what's going on. But I mean, how would she get thin right away if she absorbed them?
Thing is, what will happen is the females will start basically producing the eggs. And then a male will notice, he will start inflating his pouch. They will start dancing together, and it can be reversed also, where the male is the aggressor.
Right.
But it does not necessarily mean they are going to complete an egg transfer. It could be due with flow. It could be due with a lack of experience. It could be due to not as strong a swimming as they need to maintain
Right.
that to complete the. There's so many variables that can cause dropped eggs. Could have been she was working on eggs and all of a sudden started feeling lousy for some reason.
Yeah, true. No, but I have to, I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to ask you this because that's really interesting. And I would mention that since the 3 of them started courting, Aphrodite takes off to the other end. She doesn't want anything to do with it, to be honest. He bugs her. But the two main ones, that are doing all the dancing, and I keep thinking he's pregnant, blah, 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 blah. They happen to stay at the end of the tank, like all the time, that has more flow. Does that mean anything to you? Does that mean that they are trying? Because more flow, like they act like they want more flow.
Yeah, I don't know what your flow rate is, but erectus are a species that, although they aren't real big on corals, they seem to really like a lot of flow.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you may not have enough flow for them to really get into the dance moves they want to complete an egg transfer.
And that sounds so crazy because, I mean, I know we tell people seahorses like higher flow, you don't want low flow in a tank, all that's garbage. People who say that don't know what they're talking about. But I would have never thought they need more flow to do an egg transfer because you would think
if you get too much,
yeah,
if you get too much, it's like Susan Hopener. She runs a very high flow and doesn't hers don't pair up because she's got so much flow going through there. They can't. And I know other people that have used that technique not to get fry. However, if you get the flow just right.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I'll give you an example. One of my early Seahorse tanks was a 55 gallon, and I was running it at 900 gallons per hour flow. And I had seahorses everywhere. Trust me.
Well, I think I'm going to try that because I'm going to add more flow because that just really makes me wonder because as soon as you said that, I thought it hadn't even occurred to me, but they're staying they're always on this side of the tank that has more flow, always.
Mm-hmm. And see, one of the things I found with my combs, get them to reproduce, create a lot of flow, a lot of circular flow, have a lot of hitches for them, because again, they're considered a reef-dwelling species, and they typically do an egg transfer while hitched. So the more flow I gave them, the happier they were.
I'm going to try it and see. Because if he doesn't give me fry soon, I'm gonna wring his neck. No,
well,
I'm kidding.
It's probably what's right for those individuals.
Right. No.
Because my tank, like I said, has had fry in it with a different pair was having fry. So I don't think it's necessarily the tank. I think it's them.
I think it's both.
I think it's a
here and
combination.
there,
Yeah.
it's a lot of things play into it, I think, and it's probably finding what's right for your seahorses.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of like
Or
jumping
you're
into the
Heather and you
sea.
just throw them in a tank and they start having babies.
It's kind of like jumping into the back seat of a drive-in movie. And are you watching the movie? Or you have to go to the bathroom? Do you want some popcorn?
Yep. Yep.
Like teenagers in the back seat of a drive-in movie, oftentimes they really don't know what in the heck they're doing.
So Heather said Scrappy has mommy issues. And
Yeah.
Daniel came back and he is the one that asked us about the pouch staying large, and he has erectus. And no, it's no problem, Daniel, but hopefully you heard the discussion we had earlier, or you can play this back later. But if he's not floating and he's still eating well and he's not, nothing's going wrong, then I would not worry, so to speak. But Cheryl, don't you think it's interesting for his seahorses to have fry and then his pouch stay big and 2 months later still no more fry? Because mine went month to month to month, back to back.
It depends on the time of year. It depends on water temperatures, lighting, amount of daylight. Because remember, they are dependent. Barometric pressure plays a big part in their reproductive behavior. It's a survival strategy. It's like Dan has always said, when he had hurricanes coming in, any males that were even remotely close to delivering would immediately deliver fry. They're dumping their fry for their own survival. So changes in lighting, barometric pressure, temperature, all of this, feeding schedules, all of this can have an impact. Basically, they're perpetual hunters. Do you provide them with live food just to help stimulate them? Or are they sedentary throughout the day? Do you give them things to eat flows that they can dive into and get blown across the tank? Because that's what the ocean's going to do to them.
Right.
And so it doesn't surprise me if you're not coming close to replicating at least some of their natural environment.
Gotcha. Daniel, I'm curious. Were you, wait, hang on. Daniel, I want to know if you were able to raise those fry, because if you are, I'm mad at you. Because the first time my seahorses had fry, I think, I'm telling a lie. I kept one alive out of the whole batch. Little Cheryl was the only one that I kept alive. So curious about that. But yeah, and Daniel said, I know you want to talk, Holly, sorry, but Daniel said he's swimming perfectly, no floating, just stays inflated with no break ever. My ponies do stay frisky. His pouch is large and round. He might just be a big pouch boy. I mean, that's my thought, because as I said earlier, I think I've thought my seahorse was pregnant for months because he always looks pregnant. And then right when I think, hey, it's about time to deliver, buddy, then I see him actually deflating and doing the tail up weird move where they blow the air out. But if you never see that, isn't that weird, Cheryl? If he never sees it, the deflating.
There was a scientific research paper done a number of years ago on wild seahorses. And typically the males set up a territory. And they wait for the females to come into that territory. Then they start the dancing, and this starts the courtship process. In some instances, the female would move on to another male, and here's poor Mr. Big Pouch sitting there going, "What did I do wrong?" and they've actually
hashtag big pouch. No,
yeah, Mr. Big Pouch.
They've actually seen females that will go and transfer eggs to a smaller, much less developed male. It doesn't happen that often because the theory is normally they pick the largest male.
Right.
But apparently there is some deviation from that based on the scientific literature.
Right, but I'm just saying, his question's valid. But I can just tell you, Daniel, I'm not an expert, but I've thought this seahorse was pregnant for months because his pouch is always big. I do see him deflate though eventually. So, but if he's not floating, if he's eating fine, if he's acting, maybe he doesn't like the girl anymore, so he's pretending to be pregnant. Who knows?
Or either that,
as long as he's healthy.
It sounds more like she doesn't like what he's presenting. She's seeing something that is not what she wants, and she's waiting for something that she wants to come along.
Well, remember, Cheryl, they had Fry. So the seahorse gave birth, and then the pouch. Did the pouch go down right after, at least? Because the only thing I'm concerned about with this question is that the scientific literature on pouch emphysema is confusing. And Dan has talked about it extensively on this channel, and he believes very much that it's organics based. But there was a theory that hasn't been disproven that sometimes gas or pouch emphysema occurs because embryonic fluid or like some of the eggs didn't turn into fry, get stuck in the seahorse's pouch. But I don't think that would make him stay big and he would be floating. So I think you're fine.
I saw that happen in a CUDA that I got many, many years ago. And basically the pouch just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there was nothing, and he started floating. Right. So I pulled him out, did a pouch evac. They were partially developed in partially decaying embryos and frond in his pouch.
Ooh, YouTube, please don't demonetize. Cheryl's gross.
No, I'm serious though. I ultimately treated his pouch with antibiotics, gave an injection into his pouch after I cleaned out the mess. Imagine my surprise. I was not happy. This is why I don't buy anything from a well-known fish business. And it's nobody that's on here that we've discussed. But anyway, and apparently many of the fry had died within the pouch, and still there were undeveloped eggs. And he had a major pouch infection going on.
Right, but Daniel, in your case, again, he's not floating, he's eating, he swims fine. So I think maybe he's trying to get more eggs. Maybe she gave him eggs, he had fry and he liked it. And so he's trying to look. That's like men going like this, right? That's what the big pouch is. They're going, look at my muscles. So it's surprising to me that you never see him deflate, but you're probably not looking at him 24/7. He probably is at some point. He's probably just trying to look like a man.
That's just one thing the other thing is we always think of the males inflating their pouch as drawing attention to themselves for breeding purposes, which makes sense. But there may be a lot of other more subtle cues that are going on during the courtship process that makes a male transfer or male-female transfer of eggs, particularly when you've got multiple pairs in one tank. And the thing is, we have no way really to assess that. We can't get into their brains.
Right. Well, and Daniel also said that they're still frisky. So if he's still dancing and stuff, you don't have anything to worry about.
It's probably fine.
And Holly, you were trying to say something earlier.
He has a macho thing going on because he's always trying to look big lately, especially when he comes to breakfast lately. He likes to strut, to breakfast, and then he'll sit between the two ladies and just sit all big and proud and make himself look big, and then go to this one and they'll go to that one, and
knock then knock him.
With Dandy, because they're friends. Like I said, there's not a lot of, I don't get bickering or fighting really so much in my tank, even between the males. They tend to be friends most of the time. But when Sadie has eggs, he'll want to show Dandy that he has the tank. And then lately, I did some posts the other day, a few days back. He was chasing Sadie all over the tank. And so was Dandy, because she has eggs. Dandy was chasing her too. But he not only was Dandy chasing Sadie, but he was trying to chase Scrappy Doo to keep from getting together with her. So the three of them I'd find them all wrestling around and tail wrestling, and he didn't accomplish anything. It didn't accomplish anything. Dandy's trying to wrestle Scrappy Doo to keep him away from Sadie, and then he's wrestling Sadie to say, "You're mine," And poor
You know,
Sadie's
I
just
bet
trying to get away from everybody.
I will bet you anything that now that we have our clownfish breeding friends that come to this channel, they probably think we're insane and seahorses are insane because
Yeah.
oh my god, they're
Yeah.
wrestling and Sadie
Yeah.
likes Dandy and
It's
Big
like a
Tip.
soap opera.
But they're
Really
fun.
is. But
You
they'll
have to
sit
keep in mind.
together. Sadie likes to be with Dandy, so she'll choose to be with him.
Yeah.
She seeks him out and wants to sit next to him and wrap tails around him. And she's in her earlier days, she tried hard to get him to dance and do the courting thing, but I think she's given up on that. And she's willing to court Scrappy Doo. Now, I've seen that they will do the dance and sometimes, but she's excited about, it's almost like a schoolgirl that gets asked out on her first date. She's excited to dance with him, but she doesn't really know what to do. Like, I have to go hide behind Dandy. It's like, I went out dancing. It was fun. Know what to do next.
It's amazing how individual seahorses are. This has been a good talk about this. And Daniel, again, anybody like Daniel, if you have questions, always comment, because that's what we're here for. We're here just to chit chat and drink wine and talk seahorses or saltwater. And if you guys ever want to jump into the video, I can give you a link. You can show us your seahorses. And if there's ever any detailed questions, like Francis has come multiple times, and so glad he's doing well. But what were you going to say, Cheryl? Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, seahorses, we don't give them enough credit for intelligence, first of all.
Right.
And you have to understand that they form seahorse friends. They form seahorse attachments. I mean, how many times have you heard a breeder or a keeper say, I lost one of mine after 8, 9 years, whatever, and it was only a couple months before I lost its mate.
Right.
They have a lot more going for them intellectually than we give them credit for.
Right. And I think everything we've talked about kind of has proved that they are individuals. So, there's so many different ways to do a tank right. There's so many different, reasons for breeding or not breeding. I love that you brought up that Susan has come up with, Susan Hopner. Is it Hopner or Hopner? Hopner, I think.
Hopner.
Anyways, that she's come up with a way to prevent her seahorses from breeding. We need to get her in here one day. But anyways.
I know several people that do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see how many things people have come up with, and figured out. And it's not all the scientists. Sometimes it's
that's what I was curious about. That was about to say, the barometric pressure thing.
Yeah.
Interesting I don't have a measure of that in my house, but like you're talking about how.
Wait, how do you measure it?
There's gauges for that.
Really? Okay.
That you can see what it is. And I've never watched ours here. I haven't paid attention to that, but my guess is that it stays pretty stable because we don't really get the huge storms, like Cheryl gets in Texas, the big changes in pressure. So I'm wondering what influence that might have on
what do you
them.
mean?
I've never watched that, but it would be interesting to study that and see.
Well, what happens when a hurricane comes in? The barometric pressure drops dramatically. And Dan has openly said on more than one occasion, any males that he has in his house that during when that happens will deliver before the storm actually hits.
So
you don't have that much fluctuation where I am. So I'm wondering if that could be a part.
That very well could be. Remember, you're dealing with a species that's indigenous to the Gulf and the eastern seaboard.
Yeah,
You might,
and on the coast, I'm nowhere near the coast. I don't have those kind of conditions here.
yeah.
Right.
Let alone on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast, and I'm nowhere near the ocean.
And I'm right in the middle, so I never thought about this either. Bariatric pressure. I didn't know you could measure it, and so basically, it's just what you're basically talking about is the pressure in the air or whatnot due to storms and changing weather conditions, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like when a hurricane's coming in, watch them, and they'll talk about the barometric pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is you see sometimes if it's a really bad storm, the worse the storm, the lower the pressure drops. And I can guarantee you seahorses would not be alive to this day if they were not capable of sensing barometric pressure.
That makes sense.
I've seen them do it in my own tanks when we have severe storms coming in and the pressure's changing. They'll all hunker together in one corner at the bottom of the tank.
And see, mine have never done that. The worst storms that we've had here, my seahorses ignore. They don't even know.
Yeah.
Well, so Cheryl's seahorses are like dogs that can sense it and get scared when a storm's coming. That's really interesting.
I just think mine doesn't change as much. I'll be right back, guys.
No worries. And I need to come back. Sorry, I keep forgetting to turn my video back on. We're going to go for about 10 more minutes, guys. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. We'll be back next week, of course. But we might have a guest if Kevin or Jason wants to come. Wink, wink. We hope they will. Or Seahorse Corner. We need to get you in here and give us some updates. But hey, Chimp, how you doing? We're just open chatting. So, anything goes. But yeah, bariatric pressure. That's something I would never consider. And Cheryl, you said it depends on the condition and the weather conditions. But in my area, we're in the middle of the country, Indiana, but we have a lot of tornadoes and stuff like that. Does that matter, or is it like more ocean related weather conditions?
At this point I don't know, because
damn it, Cheryl, you're supposed to know everything. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, because I have not heard anybody that's done any studies with the changes in barometric pressure, etc., with tornadoes, or I know it's been reported with hurricanes and thunderstorms, but not really with tornadoes. So I'm not sure how that would impact them.
Well, I definitely agree with the fact, whether we're talking pressure or conditions, that they self-preserve. Like I've talked about before, in my 29-gallon, my main breeder, the boy that got to 12 inches, beautiful purple seahorse that gave me so many fry that I was able to help survive because they were so healthy. One time, right in the middle of his breeding, I changed the lighting and it was too bright. And he aborted all his fry. I had little
exactly.
snacks. And Heather's the only person I know that's actually kept those type of fries alive and helped them survive. But go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, the thing is, lighting, day length, water temperature, barometric pressure, pollutants. There's so many variables that can impact how the seahorses are behaving. It gets to be a little mind-boggling sometimes. It's like, I forget his name, he was doing the research on the engines there in Long Beach area. And when they had a massive amount of rain and flooding in that area, he couldn't find any of the engines. He went back about, I don't remember, a month or so later, and all the engines were back in the bay.
Yep.
So again, and they would not have survived all that massive flooding if they had not moved farther out to sea, probably.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because we're not going to do a deep dive into conservation, but that's the one thing that scares me about like the red list and stuff is, and Dan has pointed this out before too, is that, they do a study, but they never go back to recheck their work. Like the engines went away. Oh, they must have gone extinct, but they didn't. They came back.
Yeah. Was it Roger Hansen that did that? Was doing the work with the engines? I think that was his name.
I'm not sure.
Haven't heard from him in a while. But the thing is, the problem is the lack of research funds
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do long-term studies. Australia is probably one of the best, Australia and New Zealand area, in terms of actually doing studies on wild caughts. And we have such limited, truly limited information. I mean, right now we're finally coming to the realization after many years that about 30 to 33% of quote erectus are actually erectus redi hybrids. Nobody
Right.
used to know that they would interbreed. Well, we know that they do. There's also been documentation now that in the wild they will interbreed with another hybrid, which goes against what is being said in captivity at this point.
Right.
But it's one of those things where how can you have a seahorse that ranges from the Caribbean into the Gulf and up to Nova Scotia that has survived without some really phenomenal survival skills?
Right. I mean, it's honestly silly because these seahorses are like ancient. I mean, they've survived all of it.
Well,
So they'll probably survive past us.
Yeah, the original northern rectus were actually labeled Hippocampus hudsonianus because they were found in Hudson Bay.
Right.
And it wasn't until they did DNA testing they realized that the northerns and southerns our DNA are the same species. However, physiologically, they're very different.
Right. No, you're right.
And that was, I think,
that's
in my book.
ahead, Holly.
Remember this old book I had that we talked about a while back where they were calling the erectus something else?
Mm-hmm.
And then Cheryl explained that to me, that they used to think they were two different kinds, the northern and southern erectus.
Well, I mean, seahorses likely, very likely.
Yeah,
I mean,
here's one.
Not even likely for
Hudsonius, the large seahorse,
but-
they call it. That's the Hudsonius you're talking about.
Well,
Yeah, because
They're
they were
talking
found in
about
Hudson
two
Bay.
different erectus, like as if they're like two different species.
Listen, here's the bottom line. All right. We're not going to do a deep dive into religion either, but seahorses and all the other animals are just like humans. We all come from one, an original. I think that the reason that seahorses look different and have different adaptations and even different genetics is because breeding areas, they adapt to their areas, and they don't grow as big, or they have this or they have that because of the areas they live in. That's my thought.
Well, the thing is, Jorge Gomez Jurado, who designed the Baltimore Aquarium and it was the one that opened up Draco Marine. He's actually an expert in seahorses. Actually published, I think it may have been in Elise's group, but I'm in so many groups, I'm not sure, about how the speciation has occurred as different avenues have been opened and shut off due to landslides and things like that have blocked a normal thoroughfare into another portion, and how species have had to go farther south. And it was really an interesting article because it described how the evolutionary process was going on.
Well, send me that article, and I'll reach out to the guy. We always like special guests that come and talk about interesting things. But Holly, what would you say?
I was just leafing through this book. Remember, this is the one that was published in 1961.
Right.
And there is a seahorse in here that I haven't heard of. They call it Hippocampus antiquorum. Either one of you heard it? Antiquorum.
I can tell you it's not on the list currently.
And I'm wondering what that is, because they're talking about keeping large seahorses is the name of this chapter. And they call one pair Hippocampus punctulatus.
Yeah.
Well, wait, I'll bet you. Cheryl, what's the Pacific seahorse, the huge one? Is that Injun?
Injun, right?
Yeah, I'll bet you that's it. Yeah. And hey, Chimp, so glad you come. Let me know what's up with you, how you're doing, how your tank's doing. It's open chat, and we're not going to go much longer, but we always love to hear from you. Thank you so much for coming. Mwah. And yeah, I know it's pretty interesting, the different species, how they determine them.
And they the dwarfs pygmies in here.
They call it what?
They're calling dwarf pygmies. Zosterae, they refer
They're
to
calling
as
them pygmies?
Zots, dwarf pygmies.
They're
No,
calling
they're
them
not.
pygmies in the book. They're saying the smaller pygmy seahorses instead of calling them dwarfs. But then later they refer to them as dwarf. But
See
I
how
know they're
much we've grown.
about dwarf seahorses because then they say Zosterae is the species. So they're talking about dwarf.
The true pygmies are about the size of a grain of rice.
They're centimeters. Yeah, I'm like this. The book,
but that's true.
It's crazy. You know,
just like the scientific research is just like the learning and research and experience that we've all gone through in captive breeding. You know, they don't know everything the first time. 60s, they wrote a book about seahorses. Now they know so much more, you know, just like us. Well, nobody could keep seahorses alive, like Ray said earlier, for more than 2 years.
I'm going to Google that. I'm curious to see what it comes up with.
Okay, tell me the name again. I'll Google it real quick. I still have your ciproflaxin.
Hippocampus antiquorum.
Okay, spell it.
Wait, start over. I'm sorry, I'm typing it.
That sounds really familiar.
Okay.
Yeah, so
what is it?
Hippocampus antiquorum is ANTIQUO and then rum, like rum, RUM.
Oh, look, it came right up.
Here we go, 1814.
Yep.
So it's an old name. It's 1814. So let's see.
Hang on, we're going to show the audience here.
That is.
If you have any actual captive bred seahorse questions, please ask him. We're not going to go much longer, but we're geeks. We love this stuff.
It's called the short-snouted seahorse, the Hippocampus antiquorum. I've been reported 3 times by Wilby and blah, blah, blah. Shutterstock found short-snouted seahorse, Hippocampus antiquorum, vintage illustration stocks. I'm still looking for something live on them.
Yeah, no, it says
occurrence of short-snouted seahorse. The long-snouted seahorse.
Wait, the status is unaccepted.
I see that. Hippocampus.
There is a hippocampus.
Endemic to the Mediterranean Sea and the North Atlantic, particularly around Italy and the Canary Islands.
Okay, so basically, the guy who did this in 58 and tried to here, let's just show hippocampus. But the guy who did this did his best, but it was a long time ago. So they've realized based on genetics that it's actually the short-snouted seahorse.
Yep.
Which is, I should have put
the northeastern Atlantic from northwest of Scotland and the Netherlands south into the Mediterranean Sea. Canary Islands. In Britain and Ireland, the distribution is influenced by the warmer waters of the Gulf Stream.
Okay. Yep. Now, is this hippocampus? You've got 2 there that are real common. You've got hippocampus.
That's what they're talking about.
Yeah. They just had a different name. I think we're going to see more of this. If you think about the Kudu complex and all of these weird things going, I think we're going to find more and more that species. For instance, when Graham Short came on, he's an ichthyologist. When he came on and he was so excited because he thought Lucy had found a new species, and then they figured out it was just a hybrid. And as a scientific person, he had no idea that there was an Erectus reedi hybrid. So I just think we're going to learn more and more that they're all hybrids or the same species or whatever. They try to make up these species.
Here's the picture in my book of him. See?
Hang on. Let me try to make you big. Hang on. Let me try to make you big.
Oh, yeah. The thing is,
short-snouted seahorse. Look how thin that poor baby looks.
From a zoological perspective, there's always the lumpers and there are always the splitters. And what that says is you take a species and they both look a lot alike, you tend to lump. But then there's those people that say, but no, this one's more spiny. This one lives in a different habitat. Those are the splitters. And what happens is it's a constant ongoing scientific renaming and it's true with any species. It's not just seahorses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look, my entire thing is I just want my damn seahorses to breed. And I want to know, somebody out there has to figure out how to get seahorses motivated to grow cirri and keep it in captivity, because they're so beautiful when they have the long hair. Oh my God. I had a fry that decided, amongst others, none of the other seahorses did, but he grew cirri or Siri, however you want to say it. And oh my God, he was so beautiful. That was my favorite seahorse ever. But then he lost it.
Had
and I'm like,
those.
why?
Yeah, I don't even know which one it is now.
Oh.
Yeah, they do.
Heather, do you have these problems?
I've seen them where they had them when they were little and they disappeared. Then they grew them back. Then they disappeared again. And I suspect an environment, the seahorse's perception of the environment has something to do with how the seahorse does.
I
do agree.
Say this: when my fry had Siri, and I had several that had it, one that had a whole lot, but that fry tank was like a swamp. As far
maybe that's it. You know, that's interesting you said that, because when I had the fry, and that was what I agree with you, Cheryl, completely, except for the fact that this tank had, I didn't know what I was doing yet. This is when I first started with fry.
Grow out tank.
Right.
I had a small tank that I had to constantly clean, and it was always getting covered in algae.
That's the same with me. But the interesting thing was that all the other fry, and there were hundreds, did not have Siri or Siri, however you say it. And this little boy, and I knew he was a boy, but then he was this big. I knew he was a boy because he ran the damn tank. It was almost like a lion's mane, you know, like he was like, I'm in charge. And I just wish I knew what caused them to grow it so I could make them grow it.
I don't know, but my only experience with a female with very, very heavy Siri was sent to me by Draco Marine. And this female was so paranoid, she would hide, disappear, and just hide in the tank, and wouldn't even come out to eat until everybody else was finished eating. And they were all similar. Yeah, I mean, she was really scared. And I started feeding her in the back left corner of the tank.
Right. I remember.
I used a little stick and got her to start eating. And she'd see me coming, and she'd swim over to the back of the tank and wait to get fed. When she finally got past her paranoia and started eating with all the big guys, she lost her Siri.
So maybe it's like the loner in the crowd, the bad boy or girl.
It's
camouflage
technique.
No, I know it is. I know you're right, Holly. It is camouflage technique. I just wish that someone would do a study, or even a hobbyist would figure out why. I wish Dan was still in the business, damn it. But would figure out why and how and when they grow it. Because, you know, and for anybody new, don't ever buy a seahorse based on color or based on Siri, because as we're talking about, they can lose it. But I wish to God I could figure out how to make them grow it, because it's so pretty.
The thing is, I've had them where they have grown.
In fact, wait. In fact, in the upper, I think it's right to you guys or left on the yellow seahorse, which is one of Lucy's seahorses. All that beautiful Siri.
I have actually had them where they grew it when they were little, lost it, and then grew it back later on. Yeah. And so I'm not sure I have no clue as to what the stimuli is for that.
I wish I knew.
Candy
I really
had
do.
It when she was new, and a lot of her fry had it young at a certain point and then lost it.
Yeah.
Right about the same time they get to where they start experimenting with what colors they want to be.
Yeah.
Right about that time that they had the Siri.
Yeah.
See, my boy kept it for so long.
Alyssa. I got Candy from Alyssa, and I think she sells hers mostly at 5 months. Like so right about that time, in the 3 to 5 month time, was the Siri
See,
time.
you see this here? Yes, I have one adult that has kept her Siri for 2 years. She's
Yeah,
shy.
sure.
Ultimately, shy seahorses have it, I think. And this is what I'm saying, too. I had a few fry that had it, but they lost it in about 6 months. The only
Yeah.
ones I've
Yeah.
seen, and when I raised some a few years ago, I had several with some really, uh, Martin Fletcher was calling them my wild hairdo seahorses.
Love it.
And it was one of those things where I kept watching them, and all of a sudden, when they hit started reaching the sexual maturity stage, they were gone.
So that's really interesting, though, that you guys are all saying it's the Shire. That does make sense if you think about it. Like a seahorse
Helping them hide.
seahorses camouflage, all of them do. They all want to blend in. But if one really wanted to blend in, you look like you got algae growing
You
off
look
of
like
you.
you got twigs, yeah.
Right. But
Oh, so
in my
that
case,
tells
wait.
me
In my case, though, this fry was running the tank, and he kept the fry, or I'm sorry, the Siri, until I knew he was a male because he grew the pouch. He kept it forever, like you're saying, 2 years, and then all of a sudden it was gone. It didn't make any. But he was a
He was
He was
scared.
a boss.
He was
so
scaring the
it
heck out of me because they thought
sounds
he
to
was going
me
to
like
impale
it's
him
a
to death.
conscious decision on their part. Like they're kind of aware of it, which I think is the same with the way they change their color. Because they'll do it based on mood too, based on how they're feeling.
Yeah, but I'm also curious how they lose it. Where's it go? You know what I mean? Like one day he was beautiful and hairy, and then the next day he wasn't. It was just gone.
I
So,
don't.
anyways,
You're the first person I've ever met that had a hairy seahorse.
I want hairy seahorses. Damn it, that's what I want in life.
Yeah, the thing is, most of the ones that I've seen with Siri, typically, while they're carrying the Siri, they're much more shy, and it may very well be a genetic defense mechanism to aid in their survival.
Maybe.
Again, it's hard to say because without really knowing the genome, you can't really say that for
Right.
sure.
Well, dang it, we need some scientists to do a study. Darn it, or a hobbyist to figure this out. But it's just interesting to me that you guys all agree that it's a Shire seahorse, because that was not what I experienced at all.
I
So
wouldn't say
interesting.
mine was Shire though. The one that had the most Siri, the one that I had that had a lot of Siri, I wouldn't say it was particularly shy.
Okay, now yes, Cheryl, I had them grow it back too when I moved to another tank. They grew it back, anxiety thing, I think, and that's what I'm thinking. It's a survival technique to blend in more effectively
Yeah.
with a plant-laden environment.
So maybe like more macro, more algae makes it happen. I just would love to know, because Holly and I obviously did not have Shire seahorses. And Holly, did yours just lose the Siri one day? Just lose it? It's
Yeah,
gone?
it gradually started shrinking. Like there'd be less and less of it. It was a gradual thing to where it
Yeah.
was gone over a couple months or so.
Hmm.
And like Heather was saying, right about 6 months.
Yeah.
The most
It's
Siri
it's
was
not
probably,
fun.
like I said, between 3 and 5 months, like right in that stage when they're changing color a lot and experimenting, with their colors.
Right. I hear
The
you, but
Siri was the same thing, and then as they matured, it gradually got smaller and to where tiny spikes, and then finally gone. And when
well,
I
maybe.
got Candy, she had some, but they were little, not big Siri, but she had some little Siri all over when I got her, and she was about 5 months old.
So
It-
maybe
it's
you
kind
guys
of
are all right. Maybe you guys are all right, and it is a shy thing. And as they get more confident, they lose it. That just wasn't my experience. My seahorse, the one, kept the Siri for a long time. He was an adult male before he lost it. And
Yeah.
in my case, it was more dramatic. It was like maybe I just didn't notice that it was getting smaller because he had it all over. And I know Alyssa sells some with Siri. And they're adults, or at least, of breeding age, have
Well, like
pouches or not.
I think 5 months is what she had said is her selling time, which is what I used for mine too.
Well, and
And
I wish that
Candy was
Sam.
right at that age. I'm pretty sure when I got her, she was 5 months. And
Well, here's the thing though. I wish Sam was here today because she had some seahorses that had beautiful cirri. They were wild, and they were old, and they had cirri. So it was obviously a blending, camouflaging mechanism. But it's interesting that you guys are honing in on them being shyer because that wasn't my experience.
well,
But
maybe they feel like they need it, but it costs them extra body resources, energy to grow it. So it's better for them to not have to grow it. So maybe that's why they lose it when they have less anxiety or feel more comfortable.
because they don't need to anymore.
Remember,
Yeah.
many species, the colors that they assume and can change to, whether it be insects or many other species, it's specifically designed for predator
Evasion.
Mhm.
and as such, the cirri, by making them look like a stick, gives them more security from predators. And it may be a genetic aspect depending on where they were collected, because
Right.
which is another factor we do not have a handle on. And it's one of those things. It's like also like piebalds. Why are we getting piebalds? Would a piebald survive long in the ocean? Probably not.
Gotcha. Well, and I would say though that I can tell you my seahorse with the huge cirri that was so gorgeous was born right here in my house. So it was one of my fries. So it just doesn't make sense to me. I get what you're saying. It could be genetic, based on
Yeah.
where they come from, maybe where the parents come from or something. And
Yeah.
guys, Daniel said he does add live feeds, mysis, amphipods, grass shrimp. He
Mhm.
wishes he could raise them, excuse me, and the seahorse never deflates. That's so weird. I hope you stick with us and come back and update us, Daniel, because that's interesting to me. I'm sticking with, I think you just have the hashtag big pouch boy, but
Yeah. I'd like to see a picture of it too.
yeah, Daniel,
It'd be
I
great to
will
see a
try
picture
to,
of him.
if you can't reach out to me, I'll try to reach out to you. And if you can send me a picture, I'll put it up. Um, and guys, we're at 10:06. So do anything else you want to talk about? I'm going to try to reach out to him real quick and then we're going to have to end it. But anything else you wanted to ask, talk about, go for it.
I need to go top off tanks and feed for the night.
You go for it, Cheryl.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
log off.
Okay.
All right,
Well, you know
Cheryl,
what?
have a good night.
You guys too. Hey, Kelly, stay safe.
Yes,
You still
ma'am.
under tornadoes?
It's calmed down.
Is it calmed
We
down
made it through.
now? Good,
Yep.
Okay.
And Heather
See you guys
said,
tomorrow.
bye,
All
Cheryl.
right.
Thank you so much
Good night,
for coming and
Cheryl.
helping always.
Good
Dr.
night.
Cheryl.
Good night.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to reach out to you, Daniel, and we'll talk about this again first thing next week. If I can get some pictures from you or get you to come, you're more than welcome to come. And Heather said, I think ones that keep the Siri into adulthood, it's a personality thing. Shy, scared seahorses. I'm telling you, my male that had the Siri was the runner of the tank. He was the boss. He was the first to the food. It was just, I probably had a special needs seahorse.
And I think Sadie and Aphrodite should have had it then. Because they're
Right.
shy. Well,
Right.
Sadie's not shy anymore though, but she's not shy anymore at all. No,
Right.
she's pretty bold. Well, she has 2 boys after her, so
Woohoo! And Heather said, Siri's more common in wild caught. Absolutely. I think it's more about the perception of the seahorse and trying to blend in with their surroundings. Whether,
Yeah,
it
I
be
think
shy
so.
or boss. I think it's more
The
about
camouflage thing.
like in the fry tank where this one seahorse fry decided to grow Siri and then kept it forever. When he lost it, come to think of it, I moved him to a different tank that's when he lost it, because in the original fry tank, this is back when I didn't know what I was doing, and I had a bunch of decorations and stuff in the fry tank. And so, you know, and the decorations I was using were like, looked like Siri,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's more it, but
But
anyways,
in the end,
yep. Anyways, guys, I'm going to have to call it for tonight. It's after 10. Holly, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
man, I think we talked about everything, didn't we?
I know we do every week. It's so fun.
Oh, is there something we didn't talk about?
I don't think so. But hey, I appreciate everyone new that's coming to join us on Wine Wednesday. Again, if there's a topic you want to talk about or a guest you want to see, just let us know, because this is, you know, for all of us. It's community. That's what we're about. But I am going to call it for the night. I appreciate you all. And make sure to subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Ready to cheers, Holly?
Cheers.
Happy Wine Wednesday. Cheers, everyone.